When it comes to professional sports, the goal of every single player should be to help their teams achieve as much success as possible, gunning for the championship year in and year out. However, while the goal of sports like basketball tend to be team-oriented, individual brilliance gets recognized and rewarded as well, and the best of the best players, as a result, get rewarded with individual awards for their efforts. When it's all said and done, the biggest honor an individual can earn is a nomination to the Hall of Fame, and this is something reserved only for the most elite players to play the game. Admittedly, the Basketball Hall of Fame has proven to be a bit easier to make than the halls of other professional sports, but it's still incredibly difficult, and you have to put together a stellar career just to be considered. For the topic of today's video, we'll be going through every NBA team, and I'll be predicting who from each team I believe will finish their career as a Hall of Famer, with this being broken into two parts, with this one focusing on the Eastern Conference, then tomorrow's video focusing on the West. I'll warn you now that not every team has a player that's Hall of Fame worthy, and other teams have multiple. Before we get started though, it turns out about 76% of you watching aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, because not only does it help greatly, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. We'll be going in alphabetical order by city for the video, so starting with Atlanta, the players that I see finishing in the Hall of Fame are Vince Carter and Trae Young. Carter's technically retired now, but he finished his illustrious surefire Hall of Fame career in Atlanta after 22 unbelievably fun to watch years of play, filled with highlights and top-tier production. As for Trae Young, this is where the predicting comes into play, as he's only a second-year player, but from what we've seen from him already, if he stays down this path, averaging a ridiculous 30 points and 9 assists in just his second season, he'll definitely build up the resume for the Hall. He just has to start doing it for a winning team. Next up is Boston, and Jayson Tatum is the player with Hall of Fame potential here. Through 3 seasons, his production and all-around impact have improved a ton. He's already been a major factor on 2 teams that have made it to the conference finals, and at the age of only 22, he's really just getting started with so much more room to improve. So for me, I think he'll make it to the Hall of Fame by the end. Next up is Brooklyn, and the Hall of Famers from this team are Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Durant's a lock right now if he were to retire today, being an MVP winner, multiple-time scoring title winner, multiple-time champion and finals MVP, and genuinely one of the best players to ever play. As for Kyrie, he may not be a lock at the moment, but he too is a champion, where he played unbelievably well in that 2016 series. He played a vital role on 3 teams that made it to the finals, he's a 6-time All-Star, and he won an MVP of the FIBA World Cup back in 2014, which absolutely gets taken into consideration for a Hall of Fame bid. Up next is Charlotte, but this is the first team we'll discuss with 0 future Hall of Famers on the roster. Next up is Chicago, and unfortunately, despite having a few very talented young players with bright futures, I don't see any of them with the potential to reach the Hall of Fame. Up next is Cleveland, and the future Hall of Famer on this roster is Kevin Love. Love has seemingly started to fly under the radar as a great player, but early on he was one of the most productive big men in the entire NBA during his days with the Timberwolves, and then his move to Cleveland almost solidified himself into the Hall with a championship under his belt. At his peak, he was averaging about 26 points and 14 rebounds per game, and the way he molded his game into a more perimeter-oriented role in Cleveland showed that he could help a team win big. Next up is Detroit, and they actually have 2 future Hall of Famers in my opinion on their roster, being Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose. Rose is a very difficult case to consider because he is an MVP winner, and no MVP winner has ever not made the Hall of Fame, but simultaneously, his injuries have held him back from having the kind of illustrious career that every other MVP winner has had, but I still give him a slight edge to make it because of that. As for Griffin, injuries have also slowed him down lately, but throughout most of his career, he was one of the best players in the NBA and absolutely dominant with his athleticism and creativity at the power forward spot. Up next is Indiana, and unfortunately, they're another team where I don't see any of their players putting together a good enough resume for the Hall of Fame. Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis have been very good players and all-star caliber, but I don't think I see them taking that next step to the elite, top-class Hall of Fame level of play. Up next is Miami, and their future Hall of Famers are Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Butler's case is definitely not solidified yet, but I think he'll be able to accomplish something great during his remaining stint in Miami, which would push him over the top. As for Bam, he's another youngster just getting started with his greatness, but his versatility on both ends of the floor is going to be at the heart of a lot of success for Miami during his career, and he could end up a multiple-time winner of the Defensive Player of the Year award when it's all said and done. Up next is Milwaukee, and their Hall of Famer is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis is only 25 years old and already has 2 MVPs and a Defensive Player of the Year under his belt, along with a ton of other individual accomplishments, so he could probably retire right now and still make it. He has the chance to be an all-time great, so this pick was pretty obvious. Next up is New York, and unfortunately for the Knicks, they don't have any future Hall of Famers on their roster. They have some promising young guys like RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson, but I don't think either of them will ever be in the top tier of players. Up next is Orlando, and again, this is another team with 0 future Hall of Famers on their roster. Nikola Vucevic is good, and the rest aren't even close. Next up is Philadelphia, and their future Hall of Famers are Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Embiid is a two-way beast who has dominated the paint better than anyone in the league today, and defensively, he's been one of the best rim protectors as well, impacting the game immensely on both ends of the floor. Simmons may seem like a controversial pick, but he too has been a two-way beast who is starting to put himself into the Defensive Player of the Year conversations while being one of the best playmakers in the league. Both of them still have a long way to go before they realistically make it, but the talent is absolutely there for both of them. Next up is Toronto, and their Hall of Famers are Kyle Lowry and Marc Gasol. Lowry's presence in Toronto can be defined by an underrated greatness, because he's been at the helm of the franchise, leading them to more success than they've ever previously achieved before he got there. He's a 6-time All-Star, a tough-nosed competitor that makes so many winning plays throughout a game, and during their championship run, he didn't get nearly enough credit for his contributions, but that ring definitely bolsters his resume. As for Gasol, a lot of his resume was built with his time on the Grizzlies, where he won a Defensive Player of the Year award, anchored some very strong playoff teams and dominant defenses, and offensively brought incredibly high-level, balanced production across the board, and with him in the middle in 2019, that championship bolsters his case too. And finally, the last team is Washington, and unfortunately, I just don't see any of their players reaching the Hall of Fame. John Wall has been their best player for a decade, and in that time, he was an electrifying point guard, but he only made the All-NBA team once in that span. He's never led them to a conference finals appearance, and with his injuries, his best days are likely behind him. As for Bradley Beal, he's emerged in a big way lately, but he's done it on teams that didn't win anything. He's a very good player, but just not Hall of Fame tier unless he really takes off from this point forward. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who else you think is a future Hall of Famer if I missed someone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.